And joining us is a man who is no stranger to the Observer. Let me say a pleasant good evening to Couva South MP and UNC Shadow Minister of Labour, Rudranath Indarsingh. Pleasant good evening to you, sir.
Pleasant good evening to you, Mikee K, and let me say once again, it's a pleasure for me to be on the Observer program.
Thank you, and of course, season's greetings to you and your family, and all the best. Have a safe season, and of course, a wonderful 2024, if that is possible.
Well, I extend season greetings to you and all of your listeners and viewers, and of course Trinidad and Tobago. But as you would know, the reality is on the ground is there's a lot of suffering and hardship and poverty, single mothers, families who have lost their jobs over the last going into 9 years under this government, approximately 150,000 people. And we could go on and on about the social ills that are plaguing our society, runaway crime, dilapidated infrastructure of our roads at the Ministry of Works level, the local government level, and of course our education sector, especially with school children violence and the whole question of social services delivery and so on.
Yeah, and yeah, you're right about that. And I mean, it goes on and on. And some people might think it's all about doom and gloom that is being sold, but I think that really reflects the reality that we face on a daily basis here in Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes, I do not want Trinidad and Tobago to fail, but the majority of the population, in fact, experiencing that. Someone called me this evening to tell me, and this is a middle-class individual, that persons are experiencing real hardship in terms of meeting and treating with day-to-day living, the cost of living, how the property tax will impact upon the cost of living, increase in electricity, what will happen at Wasan from a water rate point of view and so on. And in no way the economy is growing, no way there's diversification, and of course the prospect of people stuck with their salaries is creating a widening of the haves and the have-nots in the society.
Yeah, very unfortunate indeed. I want to get into the issue here, and I want to share, of course, with the viewers some information. According to the Industrial Relations Act, Chapter 8801, the principal role of the court is to settle unresolved disputes and other matters which arise between employers and trade unions representing the workers employed by the employers. An industrial court deals with matters such as trade disputes dealing with dismissal of workers, suspension of employment, disputes connected with terms and conditions of employment, redundancy, severance, retrenchment disputes, and industrial relations offenses. I mean, that says quite a lot. And now today you are, of course, calling on Her Excellency, the President, to clear the air on the non-renewal of Mrs. Deborah Thomas-Felix as far as having her contract renewed. I mean, all that I've said there is some very, very critical and important things. And you are basically saying that we need to have some sort of clarity on this if we are to at least have some sort of confidence in the process.
Of course, the appointment of the President of the Industrial Court is a very prestigious position in Trinidad and Tobago. The court is a superior court of record, and just as you have outlined, the areas of jurisdiction as it relates to the purpose of the court, and in a nutshell, if I am to summarize, it really strikes at the core of what we would call industrial relations stability in Trinidad and Tobago, and it takes into consideration the very important stakeholders, the two important stakeholders in the context of the business community, the labor trade union committee community, and also workers who are not protected in a recognized majority union environment and so on. Workers who are dismissed can take their matter to court through a trade union of his or her choice and so on. So it it is a very, very important court. And of course, the manner in which the former president, Deborah Thomas-Felix, was relieved, it raises some question marks, and word is on the ground. We live in Trinidad and Tobago. The UNC has its ears to the ground, as we would say. And being the shadow minister for Labour, persons were asking if indeed the former president was in the country. Was she consulted? Was she called in and advised that her tenure or her contract, which was coming to an end, will not be renewed? I'm reliably informed that she was out of the country. She was communicated this information via a telephone call. And for me, you do not treat someone holding this office in such a manner. If Her Excellency was of the opinion that her contract should not be renewed, and I'm told that she was at a meeting of the Committee of Experts of the International Labour Organization in Washington, then probably they should have called her in before she traveled and advised of A, B, C, and D in terms of what was taking place. Word is on the ground, I do not know, that a senior member of the cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago seemed to have carried his weight around. I do not know, and this is why we are asking Her Excellency, because we are being told that this individual, his wife, was a former judge at the court, and probably the way that she left the court, did that senior cabinet minister in some way seek to influence whether Mrs. Deborah Thomas-Felix should have been reappointed or not reappointed? We also must ask the question based on did the business community in any way, because I could remember the Chamber of Commerce, especially the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Commerce, coming to the conclusion that the industrial court had now come, or a court that was, in the words of those at the time, from a business perspective, that the court was ruling too much in favor of workers and the labor movement, and that this should have been addressed and so on.
So the bottom line, the bottom line here, Mr. Innes, is that somewhere along the way, Mrs. Deborah, areas of our society, whether it be a political, business, or what have you. And again, what does that say? I mean, when many of us are looking on and are losing confidence in many of these offices that are deemed to be independent, but have somehow been infiltrated by political influence. What next?
And this is where the issue of, and I mean, you are quite right, because I do not know if the government took odds too, because we must deepen the argument. Remember, when workplace vaccination was being contemplated by the government for the public service and so on, there was a major uproar in the society, and the president of the court was of the opinion that forced workplace vaccination, or what we call mandatory vaccination, should not have become part of the work landscape of this country. And that was, for me, I do not know if indeed that all these factors played a nullifying or an influential role in not her getting her reappointment. The issue now is whether we need to really have a thorough debate, and it has emerged into the public domain. Because if the Chief Justice of the country has security of tenure, this has to do with the civil and the judicial arm of the country. We are now saying that the industrial court is a superior court of record. It preserves the industrial relations environment and so on in Trinidad and Tobago, the issue of security of tenure of the president and also the judges needs to be addressed so that they can operate in a manner that will not be influenced by what we would call political decision making or the weight of the political directorate or you're pandering to the political directorate to be reappointed.
And that is a very serious issue. I mean, we have so many things that are being talked about, that are being thrown left, right, and center. I mean, you mentioned the fact that there's some curiosity as to whether the former Industrial Court president's non-renewal was provoked by a senior member of the government at this point in time, whose wife was then employed as a judge at the court, while the same Mrs. Thomas-Felix was president, and with whom it was speculated that she had issues over inadequate performance, subpar for performance, as the case may be. And then you have the issue that raised as to whether Mrs. Thomas-Felix is paying the professional price for condemnation of the current PNM administration over the issue that to certify the Trinidad and Tobago Unified Teachers Association. And it goes on, as well as the Trinidad and Tobago Airline Pilots Association. It goes on. And we simply just can't look at this and try to just brush it off. But the problem here is, yes, the opposition has all right to bring this up. We want the opposition to bring this up. That is one of the key roles of the opposition, to bring up these issues, to get us checks and balances, transparency and accountability. But the union, who's a major stakeholder in all of this, first started off saying that this isn't right. They simply cannot abide by it. But then in less than 48 hours came out and said, listen, whoever is placed there, we're going to have to work with them. And this sort of flip-flopping sends a message where that all of these officers can simply be infiltrated politically, and those who we expect to stand up and be the buffer as far as between us and these decisions are simply not taking their responsibility serious. So then what is left for us as the general public?
Well, as I said, we must continue our role and responsibility in terms of bringing issues into the public domain, asking the questions. As I said, this is a very important court. It falls under the Office of Her Excellency. And I think that the president is not above board where decisions are made which has an impact on the wider society. This is not a national security issue.
No.
This will not compromise the integrity of the armed forces and so on. She's the commander-in-chief, and we respect all that. And I think that at least some kind of airing the matter or making a statement is in the interest of the labor movement, the business community, and the wider Trinidad and Tobago. You know what this has shades of? I do not know if you can recollect under Prime Minister Patrick Manning, someone in the diplomatic circles was fired by fax. Then it has some kind of bearing. We must never forget how the former governor of the central bank, Jawala Rambaran, was fired.
That's right.
And of course, we cast no aspersions on the integrity of Her Excellency, but she was the acting president at that point in time. And what is important for us is that whether it is the office of the president of the court, the central bank governor, the chief justice, all these important institutions which are supposed to be not influenced by the political directorate of the day, that the country, the stakeholders who have to go before these officers have confidence in the way that the individual was appointed to the office, and at the end of the day, we can all say that we have trust and confidence in the independent institution of Trinidad and Tobago. And Her Excellency must add value to that. You must remember what happened with the merit list as it relates to the appointment of the former commissioner of police, and we were told that it was intercepted by a high office holder and so on, somewhere between president office and the parliament of the country. We were never told it led to the collapse of the Police Service Commission, which was appointed by Her Excellency. And of course, the former President Paula May Weeks remained silent on this particular matter. And we seem to be suffering from the whole collapse of the police service, the disappearance, the interception of the merit list and so on. She remained silent at that point in time, and I think that the citizenry of this country are paying the dear price in terms of how crime is impacting upon Trinidad and Tobago, and I would not like that in any way that the current president of the Industrial Court, who has been appointed by Her Excellency, she must be like Caesar's wife, above reproach. And at the end of the day, we must have the labor movement, the business community, the workers in the informal sector and so on, who go to the court, must go to the court in the feeling that they will not be subjected to political influence because of allegations that we are hearing word on the ground what town is saying in terms of appointment.
Yeah, but the fact of the matter, that horse may have already bolted out of the stable. I mean, we hear from the major stakeholders as well, you know, the union and whatever. And of course, we heard from you, and you can tell us right now, is this administration a labor-friendly administration? I mean, we saw what happened at Petrotrin. We keep seeing as far as so much interference taking place. Somebody has to be benefiting from all of this. Is this administration a labor-friendly administration?
I mean, the facts are there. And if I start, you'll have to allow me in terms of how this government has been approaching the labor movement. The whole question of decertification, the threat of decertifying the Trinidad and Tobago Unified Teachers Association, the Airline Pilots Association, TALPA, then the hijacking of the collective bargaining process for public sector wage negotiations. The Office of the Chief Personnel Officer had no role. It was really the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance. It was never free and fair. They said from the beginning that they could not have offered more above this. The unions really did not have the opportunity to go before the court and answer or argue or put forward a case in terms of why they were seeking A, B, and C in terms of the collective bargaining process. The whole question of how the occupational safety and health issues have been treated in this country. Look at 6 workers have died in the workplace environment. They've unprecedented tragedy at Paria. The Commission of Inquiry chairman coming to the conclusion that it was not an accident of God, and no, it was not an accident, and neither it was an act of God. Today, we are no better off to know when the Commission of Inquiry's report will come to the Parliament. Will it be sanitized? Will it be laid? Who will act upon the recommendations, whether it is from a deep sea regulations diving point of view in terms of regulation, health and safety shortcoming, the issue of culpability, the issue of compensation for the survivors of the workers who died at Paria, then the collapse of the Occupational Safety and Health Agency in the workplace. We do not know what has happened as it relates to OSH against the backdrop of the Naikwan explosion, the death of Alan Lane Ramtisoon at Naikwan, the deaths of these 4 workers at Paria, the death of the worker at Wassa who was buried in the trench and so on. What is the Occupational Safety and Health Agency doing to enforce the act in the work environment? Then you have the whole question of the status of the National Insurance Fund. We are hearing that the fund may collapse based on the inaction of the government. The very fact that this government has sent home over 150,000 people they are no longer contributing to the National Insurance Fund. What is the government doing as it relates to attracting workers from the informal sector? What is the government doing about enforcing and dealing with the question of bad pay employers who are not remitting their contributions to the National Insurance Board?
And you're right. The list goes on and on. And it really makes you wonder. And what stands out here most of all in your press release is that it is in the face of all of these speculative scenarios that the Excellency ought to be transparent with the nation over the considerations which influence the decision, so that she can avoid the erosion of integrity and that of the industrial court. Now, this stands out the most. You said that the industrial court is a key player in the balance between the rich and the poor, the owners and the workers, the haves and the have-nots. And the integrity of this court cannot be compromised or seen as such. Now, if it is seen as that already, that is the perceptive of many of us here in the general public, then we are in some dangerous places.
And I think that Her Excellency, just as she acted very responsibly when she got the report from King's Counsel Jerome Lynch as it relates to the Commission of Inquiry into Paria, she informed the country that it has been transmitted on to the Office of the Prime Minister and by extension the Cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago. Her Excellency, if she communicates with the public, I'm sure that she will continue to gain confidence in the wider country, from the wider citizenry, that indeed she's making a difference and she's connecting the office of the president of the country with the wider country, because
and I hear you.
Disconnect.
I hear you, Mr. Indarsingh, but the fact of the matter is not just what is done, but how it's done. This was done. Yeah, this is done basically like a thief in the night. Here you have Ms. Deborah Felix was out of the country and coming up close to the expiration of her contract in the 11th hour, we are told, hey, she's out and there's a new player. And that, my friend, is something that when you talk about justice and getting transparency may just be wishful thinking. And that is very unfortunate. I want to thank you so much. Again, all the best for the season, all the best for 2024 and beyond, as best as you can make it happen for yourself, your family, your constituents, and of course, by extension, Trinidad and Tobago. And in the new year, we'll be talking with you again. Best of luck to you and your entire team. And thanks again for being part of this evening's program.
Thank you very much. My best wishes to you and your family. The Observer program may grow from strength to strength. In 2024, we wish Trinidad and Tobago Merry Christmas and a bright and prosperous 2024.
Thank you so much. Keep up the good work. Yeah.
Take care.